r/AskReddit. What's the worst case you've seen of someone trying to play the victim when it was all their own fault? I was in a crowded parking lot, driving around looking for a space. There was one car ahead of me. The car ahead of me stopped, so I stopped as well. I'm not sure why she stopped because there were no empty spaces and no one was pulling out. But whatever. Then, before I even had time to react, her reverse lights came on and she came flying backwards towards me. I didn't even have time to honk. She slammed into the front of my car, got out of her car, and started screaming that I hit her. When officers arrived, she was crying and shaking and complaining that her neck hurt, and cursing me for slamming into the back of her car. Thankfully, 2 people had been walking through the parking lot when this occurred and told the officer what really happened. Later, the driver of the car that hit me tried to tell her insurance company that I knew the witnesses and that's why they lied. I didn't know the witnesses, by the way. At any rate, if the witnesses hadn't stuck around to give statements, I'd have been screwed. My crazy college girlfriend cheated on me and then blamed me for causing problems in our relationship by being obsessed with the truth as I figured out what had happened. Edit. This was a long time ago, but it amuses me that 10,000 plus people have rolled their eyes at her. My best friend's ex-girlfriend. Basically her ex was kicked out of her parents' house when she told them she was a lesbian. She moved in with my best friend since they were dating at the time. At first she told my GF that she was too depressed to find a job. My best friend was okay with that even if it meant she'd have to work more, which she did. She even found a second part-time job. For the next 6 months, whenever my best friend asked her if she found a job, she'd always get the "I'm too depressed" response. Eventually my best friend finds out her girlfriend cheated on her. Her excuse for cheating was "You're always at work and never have time for me. I need someone who will be there for me." My best friend kicks her out and then her ex blames her for having to move back in with her parents. The kicker. Turns out her parents never really kicked her out. She was just tired of them telling her to get a job. My sister's friend was beaten up by her boyfriend and stayed the night downstairs of our house with her 3 kids. Next day he comes around, starts cursing her out, saying she stole his kids, grabs the baby and starts walking away with him. She chases him trying to get the baby back and he punches her several times in the face. My brother intervenes and separated them. This arsehole leaves and brings back the cops to arrest my brother for assault. My brother, our whole life, has blamed our middle class upbringing for him taking zero responsibility. He's basically a 40-year-old version of "No one gets me." He spends his money recklessly, has turned down opportunities to advance himself in lieu of making YouTube videos in his shed ranting about how richies keep him down. It's pathetic. I once witnessed a car accident where a lady blew a red light and another car, whose light had clearly turned green, didn't see her and hit her broadside. The innocent driver had her view obscured by my vehicle also entering the intersection. I was able to stop, but she couldn't. After the impact, witnesses stopped to help, and the lady who ran the red light tried to argue she was going through on a yellow and that her neck hurt. Apparently she had the nerve to attempt a lawsuit over it. Because I was later interviewed, deposed, over the phone by crazy lady's lawyer who tried to trip me up by saying another witness claimed to be the same place I was. Too bad. Man. I was right there. And there's no way in heck you can paint me as an unreliable witness for your client to steal money from an innocent for her own stupid mistake. When I was teaching, I had a student I adored who had some behavior problems. I did everything I could to support him. One day, we were taking a test and he was talking. I reminded him several times that talking during a test is not allowed, and I would have him go in the hallway if he continued. He continued talking, so I told him to go into the hall. He called me autistic on his way out, his favorite insult, and so I wrote him a referral. I called his parents and they didn't answer, so I sent an email explaining what happened, that he got a referral, and that I hope we can work together to help him manage his reactions. His mother responded saying that my behavior is unacceptable and that she is done speaking with me and I will hear from her lawyer. She went all the way up to the district level to complain about me. telling all sorts of lies and making me look like a horrible person. I don't teach anymore. My cat plays with the closet door and sometimes shuts himself in. Then I get an angry cat yowling to get let out and acts like I'm the one that locked him in there. My fiance's manager tried to strong-arm her into staying at her current job instead of taking one that won't destroy her mental health. Then cried about how no one at work likes her. A friend's baby daddy makes no effort to see his kid on his court-approved visits, but when she won't let him see the baby any random time he asks, which is her following court orders, she's a bitch and keeping him from his child. My ex-wife loves to do this. She had an affair. Left me and our kid for the guy. Got a DWI and the car I co-signed for was repossessed. Every time I hear from her I get to listen to her complain about how she has to walk to work and how she has to borrow lunch money because child support took $129 out of her check and our son never calls her and she hasn't seen him in over a year. Bitch. Shut the fuck up. Edit. Wasn't expecting such a huge response. Without further ado, I present the abridged version of the backstory. My mom ruined my courthouse wedding. Called me selfish and made fun of my shoes on my wedding day. And made me swear to her that I wouldn't tell our family I was getting married until we had a big ceremony. Then proceeded to go behind my back and tell people anyway. She is now genuinely surprised that I am upset and going around crying to all my aunts and uncles about how her only daughter will not speak to her. A former friend and housemate, who I stupidly let live at my place rent-free and who I gave some pretty significant help towards lawyer fees, lost her mind when I started voicing my concerns over her new boyfriend. She was still technically married to another man. And the new boyfriend was into all sorts of cultish, new age, spirit science craziness. Oh. And they would do things like make these lavish meals in the kitchen and not clean up. Or block my car in the driveway. Then she went on a rant in which she compared me to her abusive soon-to-be ex-husband because I hadn't put away a container of cinnamon immediately after using it. When I served an eviction notice to the B-bomb, she gave Academy Award level performance for melodrama of her own making. My mother. She pulled the old going to the store routine when I was a kid. She called 3 days later from halfway across the country bitching because dad had shut off the credit cards. To this day she tries to make my father the bad guy for her failed attempt at abandoning her family. They divorced shortly after. And I stayed with dad. I've always been second rate to her for being, in her words, disloyal. During a Sunday liturgy, I gave the priest the proper intonation for the Gloria in Excelsis. But he started chanting the Sanctus instead, which comes much later in the mass. No one knew how, or if, to respond. So the place fell silent. Afterward, the priest blamed me, the organist, for giving him the wrong intonation instead of simply admitting that he wasn't infallible and had made a simple mistake. My 50-something-year-old mom's very frequent non-sober calls in hysterics about how her life is ruined. This was after she turned our lives upside down with her alcoholism and drug abuse throughout our childhood. Went to rehab 5 times and relapsed every time. Was given literal countless chances by my dad and family to start fresh, including amazing job and housing opportunities. Nearly bankrupted my dad. Forced him to move and raise 6 children on his own. And eventually lost relationships with all of her family and children except me. Up until 2 years ago when I received a call that she fucked up again. Got herself kicked out of her free housing arrangement and lost her job before it even started. Forcing me to go pick her up on the side of the road and crash at my apartment for the night. I remember when I was scrambling to hide all of the alcohol and pills in my place before getting her. Then picking her up and her crying that my dad was still ignoring her and wouldn't give her money anymore. It really hit me that I'd finally had enough. Victimizers. Am I right, guys? My ex cheated on me and I left him. He said he cheated because he felt like he couldn't please me in bed and it made him insecure. Family member who has a ton of tickets and warrants because of driving drunk is always mad about being arrested and blames the cops for catching them. Drives me crazy because other family members keep bailing them out. Oh, they have kid. Oh, they will lose job. Act. Really gets my goat. Especially because it's drunk driving and we have a family member permanently hurt from a drunk driver. I just can't with them sometimes. Recently I went out on a date with a guy. During the date he proceeded to hit on someone and get their number in front of me. Apparently it was my fault because I'm bisexual, so clearly that meant I'd be interested in her too. I was just like, my cat sticks her foot in her water on purpose and then gets pissed that her foot is wet. Guy breaking up with me to be with another girl, then expecting me to sympathize with his hurt. No. You spat me out like gum. I'm calling you out. Don't claim you don't deserve it. I don't talk to him anymore. Edit, I should mention. He tried to get my current boyfriend to break up with me by saying I was an emotional water balloon, as well as pointing out my weight. The girl he left me for is just as heavy as me. A colleague of mine whined about her job 24/7 and that she quit eventually. Then she went to see a psychiatrist. Cause she needed to feel justified that quitting her job meant she had no regrets and she was actually mentally ill and couldn't cope. It was a residency program in one of the best hospitals in the country. Her psychiatrist, after evaluating her, straight up told her she was a whiny brat. A woman rear-ended my car in the car wash of all places. She failed to put her car in neutral and rolled right into me. She then proceeded to yell at me and insist that it was my fault for not going fast enough. After we finally convinced her that the track always goes the same speed, she decided to blame the car wash employee for making the track too slow. Cheaters on our rant or are off my chest. I'm so torn between these two men. Woe is me. Happens repeatedly. One guy victimized himself for catfishing. Claimed it was totally harmless. I believe he was just trying to prove to himself that he isn't a terrible person. A girl I know who's a complete drama queen got extremely drunk a few weeks back and got into her car to go to her ex-BF's to start shit with him. She put the car in drive and passed out. It rolled forward and hit a vehicle that was parked in front of her. When the police showed up, they found her passed out behind the wheel, with her car in drive smashed into another car, and charged her with driving under the influence amongst many other things. She wants to fight it because she technically wasn't driving at the time and because the police were bullies for arresting her. She's going to start a GoFundMe because she needs money for a lawyer to go after the police and teach them a lesson. All she does is complain about how they were being unfair and should have let her go. This girl who was in my school made a hate account against herself and got super pissed if anyone insinuated SP it was her. She'd say shit like maybe this person is right when one caption was the world would be a better place without this bitch, etc. I'm a nurse. The nurse I gave shift report to was later seen in a contact isolation room without a gown or gloves on. She claimed she had no idea because I did not tell her in report that it was an isolation room and she needed to wear isolation gowns. I was called and woken up and yelled at by my boss because the other nurse was in the room. Not me. Her. So I got in trouble and was told to think of her kids. She has 2 little kids at home who you could have contaminated by not telling her to put gowns on. There is literally a giant colorful poster in front of every isolation room that tells you to put a gown on before going in. Like you have to push this poster out of the way to even go into the room. If that's not the biggest bullshit, point the finger, then I don't know what is. And that was the moment I learned I couldn't trust my boss because she was the head of that clique. My rapist saying he has PTSD from raping me. Obligatory edit. Thank you all for your support, for sharing your stories with me, and super shout out to the person who gave me my first gold. I am humbled and honored. If you've been raped and need to process what happened, your aftermath, or whatever you're going through, just know you're not alone. You don't need to suffer in silence. Please PM me and we'll heal together. My cousin basically screwed up her own wedding by doing things like firing her maid of honor at the last minute because the maid of honor took her husband to the hospital rather than coming to the hair appointments. Getting pissy with our grandmother for not being helpful enough. She's almost 80 and isn't the most mobile. What did my cousin expect? And forgetting to make sure her brother wasn't still running errands for her when the ceremony started, which led to him missing the ceremony. And then she winged for the entire reception and a significant period after about how her wedding didn't go the way she wanted. My ex-GF tried to get me arrested for assault and rape. Turns out, it was her boyfriend that she cheated on me with who did it to her. She wanted money, so she blamed me. Does anyone think that the story of Brock Turner might fit in well to this category? My aunt invited a known child molester to her house while she was babysitting her grandchildren. When we found my 11-year-old cousin in the woods 3 weeks later, that waste of flesh actually said, "Well, the stupid bitch shouldn't have went with him." It's been more than a decade since anyone in the family has talked to that person. My ex pressured me into a relationship. Used every trick in the book. I tried to be honest and said I'd never been in a relationship before and I wasn't sure I was ready. Looking back, I gave myself what I thought was the perfect out. 4 days later I broke it off. Got threatened with suicide immediately. I'd pulled out all the stops saying this was on me because I'd been right. I wasn't ready. etc. Nothing I said mattered. I was suddenly responsible for a mentally unstable person's life. Or lack thereof if I left. Within a 5-minute period I became the most disgusting, hideous person in all existence, and my partner was yet again the victim of empty promises of love and affection. I read this to mean I wasn't the first, nor would I be the last, to be caught up in their lies. I decided to leave them to their own devices. Last I heard they're still around. Still pretending to put their life in other people's hands. An older lady walked into a construction area where she knew she wasn't supposed to go just to snoop around when the workers weren't there, and then sued because she slipped on a plastic floor covering. She worked there. She knew the area was off limits. Did it anyway. Maybe my ex-wife. Pretty standard stuff. As boyfriend and girlfriend we had all kinds of kinky sex. Oral. Anal. Strap-on. Roleplay. etc. I've never really been a huge fan of vanilla sex. Anyway. We get married. And as time goes on, she starts dropping all of the fun activities and only wants pretty basic sex. Nothing wrong with that. Just wasn't what I was into. So our sex life plummeted, but I was okay with that. She really wasn't. And eventually wanted an open marriage. I consented. I'll spare the details, but she found someone fast. Forbid me from sleeping with someone when I finally found them because she wasn't ready for it. And when this all came to a head and we separated, she went around blaming for forcing her to have sex with someone else. Why am I so bad with girls? You admitted to trying to rape her a few minutes ago. I work in IT security. The number of people who claim they got hacked and need help, just to find out they're the ones who bypassed our web browsing and antivirus protections to download .exe from the internet, is always hilarious. Some Karen at a hotel I was staying at. She stayed too long with her kids at the hotel pool. Then when it was time to eat, she pulled out some kids eat free coupon. The waitress told her the coupon was only good from 11 till 2. It was 3:30. Well, this old broad threw a fit like the world was coming to an end. And of course, she demanded to see the manager. The manager told her the same thing. Then she even got into name calling, accusing the woman of making her children starve just to enforce some arbitrary policy. You're welcome to buy lunch to feed them just like everybody else. If they starve, it's due to you being late for lunch, not us. Fucking cunt. Fucking bitch. I'm going to take this to the Better Business Bureau. And you're going to get negative reviews from me all over the internet. Alright. The manager said. Politely. Be sure and tell them the whole story. Oh fuck. I have a good one. In middle school this kid would constantly bully me. It got to the point where most of our class hated him because I was nice to everyone and considered one of the popular kids. The rest of the class gave him shit and refused to include him in anything. It was to the point where a whole auditorium of 100 kids ganged up against him when he called me a retard. They didn't beat him up or anything. They just called him out. Well, he didn't like it, so he decided to falsify bullying claims against me and act like I was harassing him. He did it every gym class. If he was in my group playing hockey, then he would deliberately position himself to get whacked by my stick whenever I tried to hit the ball and claim I did it on purpose. He would get what few friends he had to claim I was bullying him. Of course I did my best to avoid him and everyone knew it. He once crushed the water bottle I had bought with what little personal money I had back then. My teachers informed the gym teachers about him so they never believed him. A girl in my group in high school went around school for a full day with her sleeves rolled up to show off ace bandages on both wrists and told everyone who'd stand still that she tried to commit suicide because I was bullying her. There were no marks at all under the bandages and the whole thing was a ploy because our choir director caught her beating on me with a hardcover textbook and was planning to inform her parents. I had bruises. She decided to try to get around this by claiming she was the victim instead. It worked on her parents. But luckily for me didn't work on anyone else. My ex got a DUI and said it wasn't her fault. Literally blamed everyone else and took no responsibility for it. Pretty much anything my mom has ever done. She lives to be a martyr. One example. Complains it takes her a whole week to put all the Christmas decorations up. But I told her over and over not to and she doesn't have to. Now she gets a kick out of whining about it and playing the patron saint of misery. This girl at my work is not proactive at all. Always refusing to cooperate. Always saying she's too busy already. Me and my colleagues always agree to complete the extra tasks and to do it as fast as possible. There are 4 people at my sector. When the bosses show clear enough that they prefer me and my friends instead of this girl, she will start to say that they are misogynist and racist causes she is not white and not. I mean, what the hell? She is just a bitch and can't he realize it? My friend once crashed my other friend's car into a parked truck while racing in a neighborhood. After the crash he proceeded to act like he had no memory and was in severe pain even though we could tell he was fine, which he was. He was telling my other 4 friends in the car to take the blame because he wasn't a legal driver. He then lied to the police that they forced him to drive even though he insisted he drove because he's responsible. It's now an ex-friend. My friend's sister. She doesn't feed her kids nor send the oldest one, 7, to school. Her neighbors reported her to CPS. And now she's posting statuses about how cruel people are for separating a mother and her kids. We were fishing on my family's private property. My grandpa locked us in without telling us the code. After hitchhiking to an area we could get a signal. We got the code and hitchhiked back to get our car. We left the gate unlocked cause the family of the other owners were having a birthday party there and we didn't want to lock them in. When my grandpa heard we left the gate unlocked, he drove 30 minutes to lock it again. And then had the balls to complain when people were calling him at 10 at night asking for the code so they could leave. Old roommate cheated on his girlfriend hundreds of times and was going on his 6th year of college for the same major with a 2.2 GPA. He insisted it was all our fraternity's fault and it was what influenced him to cheat on her and fail his classes, despite having previously failed out of another college, despite no one else in the frat sharing these problems. Would cry over his ex-ally. Like break down in tears if he saw her in public even 10 months after the breakup. The whole time he never said how he regretted how he hurt her. Only said how he never would have done it if he knew how bad it would hurt him. Later found out he was diagnosed bipolar but refused to take his medicine as he felt he didn't have it. Explained a lot of his behaviors. Fuck. You should meet my ex-GF and mother of my son. This is the fucking theme of her entire life. Except for now after 33 years of her horse shit all the people that met her are getting wise to her shit and it's all catching up to her. I'll be sad for my son because he loves his mom. But the justice boner I will get from when her life explodes will last so long I'll need to seek immediate medical attention. Someone I know abused their kids and tried to stab their husband and then blamed the husband when lost custody. As if she didn't do anything wrong. At all. Ever. I was bullied as a kid. I went to the principal about it. I told her what was happening and showed her the bruises I had from my bully. But when the principal brought my bully in, she claimed that she was acting in self-defense and that I had attacked her first. I pleaded with the principal to bulk up footage from the camera on the bus. But I got yelled at for lying instead. I was bullied for 2 more years until I moved to a new school. My sister had put her AirPods in her pocket without the case. And put them in our dirty clothes basket. My mom went to do the laundry and had put her pants in the washer with the AirPods still inside. When my mom found out that she had washed them, my sister was so mad at her for not checking her pockets beforehand. Till this day I'll laugh when she blames my mom for ruining her AirPods. I'm a high school teacher, so I deal with this stuff on a daily basis. Kids acting out. Calling one another the most horrific of things. Then as soon as you start to get on their ass about it, they will say, and I quote every single one of them, "Yeah. But he started it." Like, holy shit, I don't fucking care. You just called your classmate a cancerous homosexual. And now you're in trouble. Dipshit. Juicy Smoolate. My dog bit me, then ran into the door frame. Then barked at me like it was my fault, lol. My biological mother taking up the time in my therapy sessions to tell my psychologist all about how my depression was hard on her. I am so scared. Really. So scared. And I never hit her. Never. Unless I can't stop her crying otherwise. So this is all very hard on me. You see. My side of the story is absolutely horrible. Facebook drama from a few years ago. This girl was leaving a bar drunk. And she backed her car into the car of someone she was an acquaintance with while exiting the parking lot. Then the next day went off on him for telling the police he saw her do it. When he knew she was poor and could have just said he didn't see it and had his insurance pay. She kept digging a deeper hole and all the replies were like, "Bitch. Don't drive drunk." It was glorious. One of my relatives who has been arrested multiple times for theft and possession of hard drugs. But always finds a way to blame society and people not supporting her financially and giving her a place to live rent-free. This girl accused a teacher, who had been there for over 40 years, of sexual assault right before her entrance exam. It was a really good private school, so you needed to take a test to be considered for admission. The accusations were investigated and were found completely unfounded almost immediately. I don't know what this girl was thinking. Like maybe she thought it was a way for her to get some leverage and improve her chances of getting in or something. On top of that, the actions of the school were even worse. They kept him in the dark for 2 months after the investigation was completed and were refusing to allow him back because of their insurance. Then a campaign was launched by a bunch of alums and he finally got back to teaching. Until his death a few years ago. He was a great guy too. I had him for a political theory class and he was really nice. He and his wife, aside from having children of their own, took in foster kids all the time and he did a lot of other volunteer work. Sucks he had to go through all of that because some teenage girl lied. My sister with every single relationship. Oh. You don't know why he dumped you? Maybe it's cause he was married and your boss and you were dating someone at the time. Your fiance is controlling and cruel. That's why you broke up? Maybe. Or maybe it's all your friends pouring poison in your ears and the married guy you're shagging. Her fiance was the nicest guy. She attacked him. Last time I saw him, he had claw marks down his face cause of her. You don't understand why you're being used for sex? Is it maybe because you just sleep with everyone within hours of meeting them and if you somehow end up dating them, go total psycho bitch on them? Hard to breath? Bad teeth? Maybe it's cause you started smoking to look cool. You don't have bipolar. You don't have depression. Both can be explained by the fact you're a hyper emotional crazy bitch who's screaming at someone 1 minute then crying cause you got dumped the next. And if you don't ever wear condoms, it's your own damn fault you got the clap. Dumbus. She's a diva and a drama queen. The worst combination. Girl in our class is always aggressive and all that jazz. She's walking down to her seat. A guy is unintentionally standing in her way. Instead of going around the guy, she starts to kick him and aggressively tell him to get out of the way, so he pushes her real hard. She falls over after the teacher comes in, so the girl tells on the guy. Then all the people that saw it happen get annoyed because they know she is lying. Then the teacher asks the guy if that's true. He says that it's a lie and that she basically attacked him for no reason. Almost everyone in the class agrees with him. The girl gets slightly screamed at, then just sits quietly annoyed that her plan did not work. My college boyfriend told everyone that I broke up with him because he didn't have a job and claimed my parents were rich and hated him, etc. He forgot to mention that I had blown my entire $5,000 of savings in 4 months catering to his every wish and paying all of our living expenses, rent, food, etc. I never once asked him to get a job because I was 19 and stupid. But I didn't even break up with him until he raped me. Had one girl threaten to follow me off the bus and beat the fucking shit out of me very loudly and very angrily in between a tirade of insults and slurs. The only one I remember is retard because I remember that's the one that set me off, but there were so many other things she shouted at me before I processed what was happening. When I fought back, she immediately pulled the victim card. Needless to say, people who witnessed the incident were on my side. My sister had to file a restraining order against her ex, and the idiots tried to appeal it. His defense was basically listing all of the things he bought her. Therefore the judge had to compel her to keep sleeping with him, or that he was entitled to keep harassing her, or something. Presented all the evidence of him being a possessive stalker himself. The duration of the restraining order was doubled. In grade 9, I was volunteering at a festival, and I was expecting my mom to give me a ride. I reminded her a week before, a day before, and even the day of. Last minute, she cancelled because she said she promised someone a week before that they would go look at open houses together. Then, she started blaming my dad because she expected him to drive 40 kilometers from his work to pick me up during rush hour, and she was pissed that he was late. I was leaving a Costco parking lot, driving down a lane towards the exit, when a woman backed out of her spot and hit me. It was a direct hit into the side of my car. Not me clipping her. Get out of my car. Look at the damage. And the woman starts screaming at me to watch where I'm going. I told her it looked like there wasn't any damage done and I was happy to just drive off. But she wouldn't let it go. She kept on blaming me and said that I must have been on my cell phone and not watching the road. I shrugged, pulled my car off to the side, and let her call the cops. The cop who filled out the accident report all but laughed in her face when she explained how she was backing out of a space when I failed to yield to her. My husband cheating and saying it was because I had a baby. My ex-husband got arrested for having child porn. He blamed me, saying it was my fault. He was so depressed he went looking for it. Edit. I did not expect this comment to get so much attention. Thank you for the supportive comments. Some follow up. His depression defense worked. He was given 8 months house arrest. No jail time. Fast forward several years to now. He is sitting in jail awaiting trial, charged with first-degree sexual abuse of a minor. Me getting mad at my club golf course when I lose an expensive golf ball. All of my siblings when they hit or bother me and I do it back and suddenly I slap like a professional boxer. Stop, a doucher bag has a ton of it. But this one takes the cake. Lady waited hours upon hours playing the victim cards, just to cry crocodile tears to a police officer. My ex-roommate signed a new lease 3 months before ours was done, and was livid that I wasn't going to cover her half. Thank God the rent payments came out of each of our accounts automatically. She knew I was moving provinces and trying to save as much money as possible. Not to mention she hadn't told me she was looking at places until after the lease was signed. But I'm the bad friend for screwing her over. And she couldn't understand why it was her responsibility to figure out how she was going to pay rent for 2 different places for 3 months. I live in a house with my brother and best friend. I share a bathroom with my brother and he cannot for the life of him remember to flush his shit or piss. So I was talking with my best friend about how lately my brother's piss is so off-colored, orange, and cloudy. Straight up looks like apple cider vinegar in the bowl. My brother overheard us talking about it and was offended that we were talking about his waist and health behind his back. All I said was maybe remember to flush the toilet. Then there wouldn't be anything to talk about. Not the worst case but a recent one that has been annoying me. My grandma was having a dinner for her birthday at a restaurant. It was just all her kids and a few grandkids. A lot of them had moved away so they couldn't come. My uncle got confused and thought she meant we were having her birthday at her house, which was over an hour away from the restaurant. He called her and yelled at her over the phone, and once he finally got to the actual place he was supposed to be, he cussed and yelled at her in front of everyone in the room. He said that she owed him the gas money for all the traveling on top of the money she was already giving him. This isn't unusual for him since he's almost 40 years old and she still pays for his house and everything else. He's constantly begging for grocery money for his kids, yet he's always buying a new phone or computer or TV. But like, come on man, you're 40 and it's her birthday. Shut the fuck up. This frat bro tried to sexually assault me when he thought I was drunk enough to not feel it. I did. I told him to stop and ran away. Apparently he does this shit with a lot of other girls. And I got the pleasure of physically blocking him a few nights later from grinding on a small and drunk girl, D, for 3 hours straight. I called him out on it the next day. He called me a bitch and yada yada. However, that girl came to me and told me he had been bothering her and assaulting her for days. She just didn't know if she could speak out about it without him retaliating or no one believing her. A few hours later, a bunch of other girls come forward to me and D. And one decided to tell a university faculty member. It turns into a huge title IX thing. Meanwhile, he starts crap talking me to everyone he knows, blaming me for bringing a bunch of girls together to tarnish his name because I was insecure when he decided not to hook up with me. He says that I forced all the girls and about 20 female witnesses to make all of these different stories up, all because I was upset he didn't wanna fuck me. The title IX ends up going on for months. And he gets off completely innocent. My ex left me after cheating and basically treating me like crap. We bought a house together. So yay financial ties. He tried to get me back. I said no. Then he started ignoring my emails to check on the status of getting the mortgage refinanced in his name only. Blocked my number. Fun stuff like that. I was legitimately scared that he'd just stop paying the mortgage to get revenge on me. So I hired a lawyer. After almost 6 months of doing anything I could to get him to respond. But somehow I was the bad guy for getting a lawyer involved. Brock Turner. He was caught by 3 men raping an unconscious woman behind a dumpster. His parents started a GoFundMe for the little shit. He got a slap on the wrist and is now out in society. His father stated in court that it would hinder his college sports position as a swimmer if he was punished for 20 minutes of fun. The judge felt sorry for him and let him off lightly. This is in the United States. My mother. Classic neurotic gaslighting abusive pose. I spent half my life trying to prove to the white witch I loved her. Nothing was ever good enough for her. She hated my husband. She saw right through her. It wasn't until I had my son. My beautiful little boy. He was perfect. He still is. But something was off. He was diagnosed at 3 with ASD. I will never forget that day. My mom was going on and on about how this was going to look having a R word in the family. I snapped. I picked her purse. Threw it and her outside my house. Told her I never want to speak with her again. My sister started in trying to get me to talk to mom, explaining we have never had our word in our family. She got cut off too. It's been 10 years since I've spoken to my mom and sister. OMG. How could I do this to them? How could I do this? They just didn't understand how to deal with it. They are just trying to cope with the loss. My mom has tried at least 12 times to get hold of me. It's pathetic. I lost a lot of weight, 150 lbs. My overweight friend didn't. I don't care. She's my friend. I love her. I tried on a pair of size 12, size 8 US jeans, but they were too big, so asked for the smaller size. Before I could try them on, my friend stormed out of the shop, and when I followed her she screamed at me for rubbing my weight loss in her face. I lost the weight in 2015. I've been this size for 4 years. This guy got upset saying we were always talking about him behind his back. He would creep up to the door in our apartment and stand there listening to our conversations. Of course we would talk about him. He owed 2 of us over $600 and refused to pay it. And then we were the bad people because we would talk about it in our own apartment, not knowing he is creeping around the door. If you want to get nothing in return, you can like and join my Discord. There is a link in the description.